Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Pad Paramahansa Parajagacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Parajagacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, let's see if I can find my spot here. Okay. Now, I forget if we read this one or not. Maybe you'll remember. Were you here last class on Wednesday? You missed. Well, we're either on 927 or 928. I don't think you were here either, Vrindavan. Wednesday. Did we read Yat Karoshi Yarashnasi? Somehow it doesn't seem like we did.
I wasn't here Wednesday. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think we read that.
Yeah, you're right. We didn't. All right, and it's not the end of the world if we do it again. Right? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 19th day of December 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 9, entitled The Most Confidential Knowledge, text number 27 at the top of page 408. And yours is not on 408, as you know, but it's text 27. Yeah, because you have different margins. If you know, very thin ones. There's 2 or 3 of those books over there. Yat karoshi, yarashnasi, yat juhoshi, tadasi yat, yat tapasyasi, kaunteya, tat kurushva, mararpanam, yat karoshi yarashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva mararpanam, yat karoshi yarashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva mararpanam, yat karoshi yarashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva mararpanam. Yat karoshi yarashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva mararpanam. Yat karoshi yarashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva mararpanam. Give a shot, Ross. Yat karoshi yarashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva mararpanam. Yat, whatever, karoshi, you do, yat, whatever, ashnasi, you eat, yat, whatever, juhoshi, you offer, dadasi, you give away, yat, whatever, tapasyasi, austerities you perform, kaunteya, O son of Kunti, tat, that, kurushva, do, mat, unto me, arpanam, as an offering. Translation. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. Purport. Thus, it is the duty of everyone to mold his life in such a way that he will not forget Krishna in any circumstance. Everyone has to work for maintenance of his body and soul together. And Krishna recommends herein that one should work for him. Everyone has to eat something to live. Therefore, he should accept the remnants of foodstuffs offered to Krishna. Any civilized man has to perform some religious, ritualistic ceremonies. Therefore, Krishna recommends, do it for me. And this is called archana. Everyone has a tendency to give something in charity. Krishna says, give it to me. And this means that all surplus money accumulated should be utilized in furthering the Krishna consciousness movement. Nowadays, people are very much inclined to the meditational process, which is not practical in this age. But if anyone practices meditating on Krishna 24 hours a day by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra round his beads, he is surely the greatest meditator and the greatest yogi, as substantiated by the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this is a verse that culminates other statements of Krishna that he's made in previous verses. For instance, in text 54, he says, Ahami Savaya Jnanam Bhokta Cha Bhavarevacha, I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. And then he says, you're free to worship whoever you want, but that's where you're going. Yanti deva vrata devam pitu yanti pati vrata. Bhutani yanti buddheja. You can even go to the Bhutas and the Pretas if that's who you worship. I remember when I was in Miami. I spent 6 years in Miami working on the Bhagavatam with Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu and Vrinanda Maharaj. And we get a lot of visitors from Brazil. A lot of disciples would come and visit and spend some time. And we heard so much about ghost worship. They would go out into the forest. There's a whole, I forget what it's called, religion. And they would, offer liquor, and they would smoke cigars and all kinds of things. They had a ritual, It wasn't Vedic, but it was their sincere faith in worship, So this is worship in the mode of ignorance. And they'll go to those beings and pretas. They'll become one of them or whatever. So so Krishna says, but if you worship me, you'll come to me. And that's the whole idea. There's one verse in the 11th canto, 9 Yogendras, it's either the 2nd or 3rd chapter of the 11th canto. And I think it's the first set. Each one has a little lesson that they give to Maharaj Nimi, I believe it is. So one verse there says, it's kind of an expansion of this idea. Kayena bacha manasendriyavam buddhyatmanava nusata swabhavat karoti yadyat sakalam parasmai narayanayeti samarpayetam. Whatever you do with your body, with your words, with your mind, with your senses, with your intelligence, with everything else you may have, anything else you may have that has been given to you due to your karma, whatever, then you should act in such a way that you can be kind of, I'm doing this as an offering to Narayan or Krishna. Narayanati samarpayetat. It's kind of an expansion of this Jet Karoshi verse. And it's, I understand it's a famous verse. We had some Indian here, I think the name was Varun, years and years ago. And he said, yeah, he knew that verse. He had learned it as a child, So, no, the long one, Kayena Bacha Manasindriyava. So it's the same idea. As Prabhupada would often say, there's no conflict between the teachings of Krishna here in the Bhagavad Gita and the teachings in the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam expands on them and gives you more depth and more completeness. It's understood, even that this is a summary. This is kind of a condensed version, but it's very essential. So you can see, and in the purport, Prabhupada talks about that it is the duty of everyone to mold his life in such a way that he will not forget Krishna in any circumstance. So if you're actually following this verse, then practically everything you do in your life will remind you of Krishna, because it's an act of devotion to Krishna. Even the eating, so important. Yes, we prepare the bhoga and prasadam, we offer it to Krishna with love and devotion. So the eating becomes a sacrament, it becomes an exchange of love with Krishna. And if you read about the Vrindavan Leela, and so there's Govardhan Leela, a large part of it, the Govardhan Puja is about everyone eating. Huge quantities are offered to the hill. The hill itself is a manifestation of Krishna, begins eating. Hanior, each day a different village would give all of its ghee and everything, and they would feast for days, So that's there. And Srila Prabhupada, when you study this verse, you say, yes, the Krishna conscious movement is built on this principle. There are tapasyas to perform, there are so many things to do, the eating is there, as I mentioned, the sacrifice, whatever you offer, so and give away, and charity. These things are mentioned in the 18th chapter, that acts of charity, austerity, and penance, they should never be given up. They should never be given up. So how do you do those? And in the context of Krishna consciousness, well, think about it. The charity is almost like giving if your household are giving a percentage, probably would recommend 50% of your earnings to furthering the Krishna conscious movement. And if you're a brahmachari, if you're a renunciant, then whatever you collect, you give to the spiritual master, and for the movement. And and austerities. Well, there are so many austerities to perform. They're not extreme like those performed by Hiranyakashipu, or you find the tantrics, abusing the body. Krishna talks about that in the 17th chapter, The austerities in the mode of ignorance, where you abuse the body for some material reason. You study the seventh canto with Hiranyakashipu, horrible. I mean, he's standing with his hands up, year after year, as the ants are eating his body. He's keeping his life air circulating in his bones. And what's the reason? Not to serve Krishna, obviously. Just the opposite, so he can go so powerful I can kill Krishna, So austerity is going to be there, but if it's not done for him, yet madarpanam, if it's not done for Krishna, then it just deepens one's involvement in the material energy. And I like to point out, everybody's performing some austerity. Even the poor guy rolling the shopping cart full of his belongings there. I mean, I just shudder to think, what they go through, And there's no elevation of consciousness. It's just sheer survival. And it's such a difficult life. So you're forced to perform these austerities. If you do it in a regulated way, according to the instructions of the Shastra and the Guru, then it's purifying. Famously, Rishabdev, in his verse 5th canto, 5th chapter, text 1, Prabhupada gave 6-7 verse lectures on this as he would travel from city to city in India. I think the book had just come out. It was right after the marathon, and if that was part of the marathon, 17 books. So, what does he say? First of all, the context. He's about to take sannyas, and it was quite a sannyas that he took. We won't get into that. But he's gathered all his sons, exalted sons, 9 of whom became these yogendras who I mentioned, and the other 91, headed by King Bharat, who took over the world and managed the whole world, So he's instructing them, his final instructions. So the first lesson is he kind of makes them sit up straight. Whoa, these are pretty strong words. Nayam deho deha bhajang niloke kashtang kamanarate vidbujamye tapo divyam putrakayena sattvam shuddye jisma brahma saukyam tvanantam. So he says, certainly anyone who's taken a human body should not work very, very hard just for sense pleasure, which is available to the stool-eating hogs. Just like Krishna says in the third chapter, I think it's the 3rd chapter. Agayur indriyaramo mogam partisa jivati. Anyone who lives simply for pleasing the senses is leading a sinful life. Aga ayur means he's passing his life in sin. Aga. And mogam, and for no purpose. In other words, for no end. Is just wasting the precious human form of life and probably on the way to losing it. So this is the same idea, but it's more detailed. So he says, one should not waste his life in this way. Then what should one do? Tapo divyam puttaka. Oh, my dear sons, you should perform tapasya, voluntary austerities that are divine. Because austerities, as I pointed out, they can be done in the mode of ignorance and for nefarious reasons. But for purification, that's the reason. Tapo divyam puttaka yena, by which sattvam shuddhyed, your existence will become purified. Well, what's the advantage of that? And then comes the punchline, if you will, the whole point of the verse. Shuddhyed yasma brahma saukyam tvanantam. You will become eligible, you will become able to enjoy unending Brahman happiness, spiritual happiness. that's ever increasing, and it's not bound by the body. So that's the choice we have. Most people have no idea there's such a choice. Pleasure means pleasure of the senses, including the mind, all of the entertainment, all this stuff is all. And that's what pleasure means. But that pleasure is clearly so limited and temporary. If that's all there is, it's very depressing. But it's not all there is. That's the great news, the gospel. Doesn't the gospel mean good news? They were coming up on Christmas, so I'm getting they gave me the Sunday feast. It's on Christmas. And I'm going to get. There's a little pamphlet. It's a wonderful little thing compiled by Satyaraj Prabhu, who's a real scholar. And it's called, "You Mean That's in the Bible?" There's all kinds of quotes that directly relate to our own principles here. The most famous of which is, Jesus says, "Love thy God with all thy heart and all thy mind and all thy soul." Something like that, right? That's bhakti. Anyway, so how to perform that austerity with our modern Kali Yuga bodies and all of these things, that's practical. And that was exactly what Lord Chaitanya's mission is. Now, of course, this is spoken 5,000 years ago, Krishna is speaking. But he's giving it to us in a practical way. What did we have earlier in the chapter? Patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhakti apayachati tadaham bhakti padanamishnami prayatatmana. That, okay, I know it's so difficult to gather, great ingredients and make so tasty. So a leaf, a flower can mean the flour of the grain, that's also leaf, flower, fruit, water, not fruit, a fruit. And I saw that. It said fruit means many fruits. It's good if you can offer many fruits. We're able to do that, by Krishna's grace. But even whatever fruit you can get. So, but you have to offer it with love. You have to offer it with real devotion. And that's what the real essence of it is. If you can do that, because you have faith, because you have some knowledge of who Krishna is, and so then Krishna will accept it. Not only accept it, but eat it. He says, Ashnami prayatatmana. Now, how does he eat? Because I'm not sure if 100% is there, but by and large, the offering is there when we take it off, and we're able to honor it. There's some pastimes where it's not there. Lord Chaitanya's, some of his followers. I won't get into that. But by and large, he can eat through his eyes. What is that verse in the Brahma Samhita? Angani yatsya sakalendriya vrittimanti pasyanti panti kalayanti chadangsi. The first line means that the activity of any of his senses can perform the activity of all the other senses. Well, that's pretty amazing. We can't do that, right? So that means that he can just see how, and tell how much love was and devotion was put into it, and then he tastes that. That's what he tastes. So in other words, it's practical. It's practical with our senses, with our means to perform bhakti. And these facilities, Srila Prabhupada, with great effort, and his disciples put it together. So this is a very simple formula. And the result of that is purification. You stay linked to Krishna because these are just things that you're always doing. Whatever yat karoshi, whatever you do, whatever you eat. Well, everyone's doing things, eating things. And if you're civilized, you're also performing some sacrifices, offering, and charity, the dasiyat. So these are things that make any human being, or at least civilized human being, is doing. And there are ways of doing them under instruction from the spiritual master for Krishna, and in this way advancing devotional service. Okay, probably this is the principle of the society set up. If anyone practices meditating on Krishna 24 hours a day by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra around his beads, he's surely the greatest meditator. So that underlies it. It makes it possible to even consider doing things. If you are seriously chanting, which is the Yuga Dharma, then it's possible, under guidance of Srila Prabhupada set it up, you can do all of these things for Krishna and stay connected. That's the idea. Okay, any discussion? Let us go on. Shubha Shubha Palarevam Mokshase Karma Bandhanai Sannyasa Yoga Yuktatma Vimukto Mamapaishyasi. In this way, you will be freed from bondage to work and its auspicious and inauspicious results. With your mind fixed on me in this principle of renunciation, you will be liberated and come to me. Purport. One who acts in Krishna consciousness under superior direction is called yukta. The technical term is yukta-vairāgya. This is further explained by Rupa Goswami as follows. Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayunjataha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu 1-255. Rupa Goswami says that as long as we are in this material world, we have to act. We cannot cease acting. Therefore, if actions are performed and the fruits are given to Krishna, then that is called yukta-vairāgya. Actually situated in renunciation, such activities clear the mirror of the mind. And as the actor gradually makes progress in spiritual realization, he becomes completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, at the end, he becomes liberated, and this liberation is also specified. By this liberation, he does not become one with the Brahma Jyoti, but rather enters into the planet of the Supreme Lord. It is clearly mentioned here, Mama Upaishyasi. He comes to me, back home, back to Godhead. There are 5 different stages of liberation, and here it is specified that the devotee who has always lived his lifetime here under the direction of the Supreme Lord, as stated, has evolved to the point where he can, after quitting his body, go back to Godhead and engage directly in the association of the Supreme Lord. Anyone who has no interest but to dedicate his life to the service of the Lord is actually a sannyasi. Such a person always thinks of himself as an eternal servant, dependent on the supreme will of the Lord. As such, whatever he does it for the benefit of the Lord. Whatever action he performs it as service to the Lord. He does not give serious attention to the fruit of activities or prescribed duties mentioned in the Vedas. For ordinary persons, it is obligatory to execute the prescribed duties mentioned in the Vedas. But although a pure devotee who is completely engaged in the service of the Lord may sometimes appear to go against the prescribed Vedic duties, actually it is not so. It is said, therefore, by Vaishnava authorities that even the most intelligent person cannot understand the plans and activities of a pure devotee. The exact words are, Tanra Vakya Kriya Mudra Vigyaya Na Bujhaya. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 23:39. A person who is thus always engaged in the service of the Lord, or is always thinking and planning how to serve the Lord, is to be considered completely liberated at present, and in the future his going back home, back to Godhead, is guaranteed. He is above all materialistic criticism, just as Krishna is above all criticism. So, Shubha Palayarevam Mokshase. So in the course of our activities, one may get some auspicious result or inauspicious result, but mokshase, you become free from the results. The whole idea of trying to get liberated is that you want to get free from the activities you've already done, and you don't want to perform any other fruitive activities, any other activities that are going to bind you. So anything done simply as a service for Krishna, for his benefit, is free of karma. In other words, it's called the state of naishkarmya, where you're acting, you're doing so many things, but you're not accruing any fruits. You're actually acting in such a way to get free from previous bondage. So this is a very important consideration. So therefore, it's a shubha. So there may be some inauspicious results of previous activities, but all of that you become freed from by this process, yat karoshi yadashnasi. And this is sannyasi yoga yukta atma. Yukta atma means your soul is linked. You are linked to Krishna by this activity. Vimukto, you're freed from all of these palaya, these fruits of previous activities or current activities, and mamapaishasi, you come to me. This is not a personal liberation. There's a kind of liberation that people think, I'm going to get liberated entirely from having any kind of body at all, of any kind of senses. Because Prabhupada explains in the purport to 4.10 in the Bhagavad Gita, vitaraga bhaya krodha manmayamam upashitaha bhavo jnana tapasa putamad bhavamagata. So this word vitaraga bhaya krodha, this phrase comes up several times in the Bhagavad Gita. Vita means free of, raga means attraction, bhaya is fear, and krodha is anger. Free of attachment, fear, and anger. So Prabhupada is a very fascinating purport. I haven't looked to see whether this is based on Baladev's commentary, which a lot of the Prabhupada's purports are. But he says these are, taking each one separately, he says these are different ways in which people are stopped from surrendering to Krishna. The first and most general one is just raga, material attachment. Most 99.999% of the people are so materially attached that they have no idea who they really are, why they're suffering, and that there is a God. They may vaguely believe in God, but they don't see any day-to-day or minute-to-minute relationship they have with God. And it's all just how to survive in this world and how to eke out some pleasure, you know, like that. It's a tragic waste of human life. It's out of ignorance. So that's raga. People are not even interested. They haven't come to the point of even being inquisitive about the absolute truth, which is really what it means to be a human being. Atato brahma jigyasa, you know. So then there's bhaya, and this is, he says, the impersonalists are like that. Is that they have all, you know, they conflate having a form, having a body, having activities, desires, with having material desires, material activities, material body. And so their idea of liberation is to get rid of all those things. It's akin to Buddhism. But it does at least have the positive view of Brahman, of the white light, of the impersonal, as a goal. But there's this famous verse Prabhupada would always quote from the 10th canto. It says, the demigods are praying to Krishna in the womb. They come and kind of secretly into the dungeon there, and they have all these prayers, and the most famous is this one where they say, Ye nye ravindaksha vimukta maninas tvayashta bhavada vishuddha buddhaya. That those who are not your devotees, but still want liberation, they have a philosophy that convinces them that they have liberation. In their own mind, they're liberated. Oh, lotus-eyed one, vimukta maninas, they're liberated in their own mind. But their ashtabhavat avishuddha buddhaya, their intelligence is not purified. Then it's impure. That means they're still envious of the personality of God and Krishna. So they posit that the absolute truth is impersonal. And by great effort, there's this word kritrena. Sanskrit is such a wonderful language. There's so many onomatopoeias there, which means words that mean what they sound like. Like we have the word splash in English. Obviously it sounds like a splash, doesn't it? And there's many others. Roar, whatever. So this is kritrena, is a Sanskrit word which means severe austerities. You know, you can almost hear. In other words, because you have to deny the senses and the mind out of sheer will. You're not engaging them in service. You know, you have all of these pushings, right? Vacho vega, manasa krodha. But you can't engage them. We have activities, you know, we'll see beautiful deities, we'll hear beautiful music about Krishna, we'll taste the prasadam. All the senses can be linked to Krishna. That's bhakti. But they don't have that. For them, it's all maya. The holy name, it's just a sound. The deities are statues. I mean, it's even difficult to just say it, you know. So they're blocked. They say they're already living in hell. There's a verse like that, you know, Arche Vishnu Shiladi. Hare Krishna. So the fear of having because all you know of the form is the, you know, material forms that we've had, and these are source of suffering. So therefore they jump to the conclusion that liberation means not having a form, not having senses, not having this. So this is fear. And then there's anger. The anger, Prabhupada says, is being cheated so many times in the Kali Yuga by false philosophies, this and that you don't believe anything, and everything is a void. Nothing is real, you know, akin to the Buddhism, you know, that the goal is merging in the voidness. So all of these are blockages for surrendering. So devotee is free of vitaraga bhaya krodha, but is still manmayama, but filled with thoughts of me and a surrender to me. You see, that's the devotees. And bhava jnana tapasa, with such a mentality, cultivation of knowledge and austerity is purifying, and they come to me. So this is a related verse here. So this verse by the Rupa Goswami is really important. He's defining yukta-vairāgya. Yukta-vairāgya means detachment in yoga, in bhakti yoga. So anasakta savishayan means without attachment to the objects of the senses, but not rejecting them, but yataham upayunjata, engaging them where appropriate in the service of the Lord. Just like we have this building. This is a building, at one point it wasn't a temple, obviously. I mean, we didn't build this from scratch, I forget if it was a warehouse, maybe a movie theater way back in the 60s, 70s, I don't know. But then devotees came and turned it into a temple. All of these decorations took a year to do all of this. It was a wonderful gift to future devotees. And so that's vairāgya. They didn't do it for themselves. They weren't getting paid. They're doing it for Krishna. So nirbandha Krishna sambandhe. What I understand is, therefore, you remain unbound to the objects of the senses, because you're not engaging them for your own pleasure, but for Krishna's pleasure, and instead you're becoming bound up to Krishna, which is what you want. You want your asakta, your attachment, to be cultivated for Krishna more and more. Remember how the seventh chapter began. After the yoga chapter, which is too difficult to perform. Krishna says, don't worry. He gives him this mudra, this abhaya dhan, the gift of fearlessness. Radharani is giving us. Don't worry, yoginam api sarvesham magatendana. The greatest yogi are those who are always thinking with me in their heart, worship me with great and transcendental faith. They are the supreme yogis. And you could almost hear Arjun breathing a big sigh of relief. Oh, that's good, because I'm already always thinking of you. I'm your friend. And the next verse, he says, Maya sakta manaparta. Now I'm going to teach you how your mind can be naturally developed in attachment to me. Without all this going off to the forest and pranayama, forget all that. And it goes on and teaches, look, I know it's difficult to meditate, and just whenever you taste water, remember that it's me. That's me, because I've created the water. That's my energy. He said, "Bhuma apano vayo." I created your tongue, with his ability to taste. So the very act of tasting the water tastes. That's all my energy. Therefore, it's me. You can remember me there. You see the light of the sun and the moon. That's me, because it's my energy. So this is a practical way where we can cultivate remembrance of Krishna in daily life. But it depends on us not trying to enjoy the senses and the sense objects. As soon as we do that, we become Krishna's rivals, and that means we forget Krishna. That's what Maya means. Maya means to become Krishna's competitor. And then it's such a foolish attempt, but still, in the madness of illusion, we try to do that. So human beings, we can understand this is not a good investment. We're not going to really enjoy there. So you have to deny that immediate enjoyment, cultivate the chanting of the holy name and all the processes, and then be able to enjoy transcendental happiness by becoming attached to Krishna. So then there's that's yukta-vairāgya. Then there's polgu-vairāgya. There's another verse that he doesn't mention here. That false detachment, again by the Mayavadis. And it says, Prapanchikriya buddhya hari sambandhi vastunak mumukshubi parityago vairagyam polgu katyate. So what this means is that the Mayavadis, they see everything as material. Even those things directly related to Krishna. As I mentioned, they'll come in here and they'll see that you're just worshiping a statue. You're just completely bewildered. And the holy, it's just a sound. There's so many sounds. You could chant anything, And you chant John, 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 John. Well, try it. See it. Prabhupada says, you'll become disgusted after 5 minutes, But you could chant Hare Krishna for hours, all days. We have these retreats, these kirtan melas. They just chant all day for hours. They don't eat. They forgot it. I remember I went on a japa retreat. We used to have them here. We had some in Joshua Tree, and there was one in Atlanta area where I went to, and up in New York. And one day was dedicated to chanting 64 rounds, and near the end of the retreat. So I'd never done that before. This is, and so I was chanting, and gradually you get more and more absorbed in the name, you know. And I started to remember the early days when I first started chanting in Brooklyn, you know, and of course I saw the Radha Govinda and all these things. It was a wonderful experience. And so I even thought, well, how can I arrange my morning program so I can actually chant 64 rounds? Well, if I get up at 1 o'clock, let's see. Even if you chant 5-minute rounds, it takes 5 hours, right? Or 5 hours and 20 minutes. I don't know if you've ever chanted. I mean, 5 minutes a round is like 3 seconds a mantra. That's pretty. It's very difficult. But somehow Haridas Thakur Prabhupada said so he's chanting. But the point is that you get to the point where it's not like, oh, I got somebody around, you know, I can't. It's not like that. It's like it's the. What is it? Rupa Goswami describes Narada vino jivana sudormi niryasamaduri pura from Krishna nama kamam spadameva sanheva sena sada. So he says, oh, holy name, you're the inspiration for the vina of Narada. Narada vino jivana sudormi niryasa madhuri pura. You're a flood of the sweetest nectar, concentrated nectar. Niryasa madhuri pura. Oh, holy name, Tam Krishna, if you please, Tam Krishna namakam spudame rasaneva sena sada. Please always appear on my tongue with the greatest taste. Man, I always taste it so sweet that I never want to stop. It's just like if you know, you can, if you taste the gulab jamuns, you know what a gulab jamun is. I don't know if you know what a gulab jamun is. It's, can you imagine? But anyway, they were sweet, full of ghee and sugar, you know, and fried milk. Wonderful. And so we used to have, I never participated, I thought I would die. Gulab jamun eating contests, you know. But you know, 1, 2, 10, 12, 20. But there's obviously a limit, you know, obviously. But if what you're tasting is the sweetest of the sweet, but there's no limit really, you know. So Rupa Goswami says, Tunde Tanda Manita Team, I want to have millions of mouths when I chant. It's so sweet, it's the sweetest of the sweet, you know. Madhura Madhura Meta Mangalam. So it's such a wonderful thing, because here you are, you know, you're enjoying, there's no question of it, you know, you're enjoying serving Krishna, and he's enjoying, you're pleasing, you know, enjoying his name. And it's not wearing out your senses. In other words, you can easily do it forever. That's the whole idea. So that's why in those verses that I always quote, practically in every class I'm going to quote the same verse. Yehi sangsbharjata bhoga dukkha yonai hevate ajanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha. That the pleasures derived from the senses contacting their sense objects are sources of misery. They have a beginning and an end, and therefore the wise do not delight in them. So in that purport, Prabhupada quotes a verse from the Shastra about what real pleasure is. Ramante yogino anante satyananda chiratmani iti ramapadena supuram brahmamadiyate. That the yogis, the bhakti yogis, actually enjoy unending, unlimited happiness. Ramante yogino anante. Satyananda, the actual bliss. Chidatmani is spiritual. Iti Rama, therefore, one name for the Supreme Absolute Truth is Rama. Rama means, you know, spiritual pleasure. The abode of unlimited spiritual pleasure. So that's what, you know, it's not wrong or bad to aspire for that. But we should know that the means of getting to that point is amazingly forgetting about your own pleasure and thinking always of the pleasure of Krishna, you know. And if you can be in that mood, you'll find yourself in bliss. I remember we had a bhakti here many years ago, and he was sincere to a point, you know, but he was too much introspective in his own head. And he said, yeah, I was chanting this way, and I was feeling this quality of bliss, but then I lost it, you know, and he was thinking all of his own happiness. And he couldn't quite, you know, make the transition. Where you're concentrated on what can I do now, you know. And sometimes what you can do now for the best thing for Krishna is to just concentrate on every syllable and try to really improve how you're chanting at this very moment. You know, that's be here now. Be here now is a very important thing. Anyway, I'm kind of getting a little far afield. But this is real sannyas. Sannyas yoga yuktama. Sannyas is not just a spiritual order. You know, the sannyasis, that's very important. But the mood of sannyas is right here. As Prabhupada says, real sannyas, anyone who has no interest but to dedicate his life to the service of the Lord is actually a sannyasi. Like I'm sorry that there's a lot of Sanskrit this time, but I'm just in that frame of mind. There's in the beginning of the second chapter, in the third chapter of the second canto, there's a passage where Srila Goswami is giving this whole list of demigods you can worship for different objects. You know, you want good health, you worship Surya. You want a beautiful wife, you worship Uma. If you want strong senses, powerful, worship Indra. It goes on and on like that. And then the culmination of it is, but akama sarvakamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. If you are udaradi, if you're really intelligent, then whether you're full of all these material desires, you have no material desires, or you want liberation, the intelligent udaradi, the intelligent person will practice intense devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then in the purport to that verse, Prabhupada, he gives a kind of a summary of what the essence of bhakti is. He quotes from Jiva Goswami in one of his sandarbhas. He doesn't mention which one. I haven't found it yet. But it's this phrase, and I remember reading this, soon after I joined 50 years ago. I said, this is great. This little phrase kind of encapsulates the whole thing. Bhajaniya padama purusha sukha matra swasukatvam. This is the central consciousness of a pure devotee. Bhajaniya means worshipable in this context. Padama purusha, the Supreme Person, the worshipable Supreme Person, Krishna. Sukha matra, only his happiness. Matra swasukatvam should be your happiness. In other words, you're taking all of your happiness from trying your best to give Krishna as much happiness as possible. This is real bhakti, pure bhakti. And then you find yourself in that situation experiencing the highest happiness. Because don't forget, in the Brahma Sutra, we find Anandamayo Vyasad, that Krishna is by nature full of bliss. Okay, that's not startling. But we're part and parcel of Krishna. And therefore we're also by nature full of bliss. But we've lost that because we've separated ourselves by our consciousness from Krishna through becoming absorbed in the material energy. That's why we're suffering. That's what that means. The fear comes as soon as you turn away from Krishna and we get absorbed in the dvitiya, the dualities of this material world. So what's the solution? No mystery, turning back toward that Isha and practicing pure bhakti under the guidance of the pure guru. It's all in this one verse. Again, the 9 yogendras, very valuable. So now, this one more thing about, oh boy, we're running out of time. The other kind of vairāgya, which is polgu vairāgya, which means weak, is as I mentioned, prapanchikriya buddhya harisambandhi vastrunak mumukshabi parityago vairagyan polgu kachyade. Those who aspire for mukti, not for bhakti, but for mukti, liberation, they see everything related to even those things related to the Lord directly as Maya. And Prabhupada says there's a river in India called the Polgu River. It dries up in the summer. But the riverbed, if you push your hand down a few inches, you'll feel moisture there. You see? So similarly, the impersonalists may look to be great vairagyas, but a little bit you push your hand in their heart, you'll find so many material desires. They're not being sublimated by bhakti. And so many material desires are there, name and fame, whatever it may be, and eventually they come out, they fall down. And the rest of this verse I quoted, Aruha Kritrena Param Padam, by great austerities, a few of them may control the senses, the mind, and everything, and come up to the point of Brahman, Param Padam, and that's it. But Patantyado, they eventually fall down again. And Patantyado, Anadruta Yushmarangya, because they're averse to serving the lotus feet of Krishna. Huh? They get bored. It's boring there, Can you?
Within this life, Brahman realization, or actually
No, it's I get the impression it's this one life. It's in this life, yeah. And there's examples, you know, of great impersonalists who then came down, they opened hospitals and this and that, you know, some kind of, yeah. So I kind of took the whole class, so got to leave a little time for poetry, you know. Otherwise, what's the use? So, I don't know if I shared this one. This is a very beautiful verse by Rupa Goswami, praying that the lotus of Krishna's face will eternally take shelter or appear, manifest in the lake of his heart. Smita duce makadanda syandivatrara vindam tavapadapadahan sandvishta gandham mukunda vidichita pashupali netra saranga rangam mamadidiyatadage sangamangi karotu. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious nectar of the beauty of your smile. Your exalted devotees, great swans, seek the fragrance of that lotus which does air their hearts beguile. Your beloved gopis' eyes, mad bees, taste the most exquisite pleasure in that lotus of your face. O my dear Mukunda Dev, I pray, may the lake of my poor heart be by that lotus ever graced. Hare Krishna. And what was that one little line I came up with? I beg to be blessed by the best of the bliss-filled boys of Vrindavan Dham. On that note, we'll adjourn. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare.